Okay, welcome to Critical Wade Theory, or what might be called Kaiju Files today. So, we're going to look at a monster, a metaphor, and the mayhem behind one of cinema's biggest beasts. We're going to look at The Return of Godzilla, released in 1984 and known in Japan simply as Gojira. This isn't just another sequel, this is a reboot, a resurrection, if you will, and a sharp tonal shift that kicks off the Heisei era of Godzilla films. This movie is a little bit more serious than, some of the other Godzilla movies that were there before it. It's a little bit more of a return to form. Directed by Koji Hashimoto and produced by Toho Studios, the Return of Godzilla clocks in at just over 100 minutes. It reclaims the serious, haunting tone of the original 1954 Gojira. No goofy monster tag teams, no space aliens, no weird Godzilla sun that blows these cute little smoke rings or whatever. It's just one monster, one city, and a looming threat of global annihilation. So it's really more bleak than, the sort of good guy Godzilla that was starting to dominate in the storytelling. The movie wipes the slate clean for the most part. It ignores every sequel made after the original. It's a direct continuation, or maybe more accurately, a direct response to Gojira's atomic age terror. So, the plot in brief: a new Godzilla rises from the ocean and heads straight for Tokyo. The Japanese government scrambles, but the real tension, it's more international and more human. The US and Soviet Union both want to respond to the monster with nuclear weapons, and Japan says no. Post World War II, that's a hard line for them. What follows is a tense geopolitical standoff, with Godzilla stomping straight through the middle of it. Eventually, the military lures Godzilla, and this, I suppose, is a spoiler alert. But anyway, the military lures Godzilla to Mount Mihara and uses the high tech Super X aircraft to trap him inside the volcano. Godzilla is buried alive. So that's a pretty simple plot, and it's sort of a haunting story compared to what you might expect. The message beneath the mayhem is that the movie is bringing the metaphor back. Just like in 54, Godzilla isn't a hero or a protector, he's a walking symbol of nuclear devastation, or maybe even the looming catastrophe that is nature itself. It, it could be construed as just change, devastation, the destruction, and all that sort of stuff, all that sort of fun stuff. And in 84, that metaphor was tangled in the Cold War. The film reflects Japan's precarious position between two superpowers, each ready to turn its soil into a battlefield. You feel the fear not just of Godzilla, but of escalation, of being caught in the blast radius of someone else's war. The idea that America is not the world's policeman, that's not just a line from a movie, that's a worldview. And it's really one of the messages of this film. There should be no single national policeman, I guess you could say. And this movie does have style, too. It's arguably one of the best Godzilla films, not for spectacle, but maybe for restraint. It's darker, more grounded. The Super X is introduced here. It's a sleek military aircraft that doesn't feel like a toy, but like Japan's desperate attempt to survive. In contrast, the American cut, Godzilla 1985, heavily altered the tone. They brought back Raymond Burr from the 1956 US edit, added new Pentagon scenes, which could be seen as, American propaganda, and reframed the story to be more pro American and anti Soviet. Well, what a surprise. A lot of the original anti nuclear themes were edited down or sanitized, which sort of makes this US version of the movie a bit of a joke compared to the Japanese one. So you could watch that version if you want. Obviously, if you're a completist, you probably will watch that. Well, you probably have seen this movie already if you're a Godzilla completist, but I'm just saying it's probably for most people not going to be as good as this one. So there's an NBC article discussing how Hollywood whitewashed Godzilla's original message. There's a quote where they say, "Certainly all the pieces that could be construed as critical of the United States or atomic testing were stricken from the film," the movie in question here. So it's not just something that I'm noting. This is a pretty common critique of the movie. So, The Return of Godzilla isn't just a monster movie, it's a Cold War thriller, actually. A political drama, actually. A national reckoning with Japan's past and its place in a nuclear world. Of course, the Soviet Union, but that is almost like a tongue twister for me, I guess. I can't always speak. But anyway, the Soviet Union is now gone, but the types of questions that were around during the Cold War still linger. And, the human destructive power of war and genocide and all that kind of stuff is certainly as relevant as ever. And this movie does ask tough questions. Can a nation refuse superpower pressure? Can it remain sovereign in a world of giants? And Godzilla, once again, is the answer, to that question, I guess, or the representation of that question. He is a natural enemy to humanity in this movie. He's back to being a terrifying force rather than just a cute little mascot. Not that I hate all of those Godzilla movies where he's less terrifying, or she. I guess Godzilla technically doesn't really have a sex or gender. Although, I think a lot of people will say, oh, Godzilla's male, or no, Godzilla's female, or Godzilla's, gender neutral, whatever. Um, to me, Godzilla is still just a force of nature of some kind. So, The Return of Godzilla stars Ken Tanaka, Yasuko Samaguchi, Yosuke Natsuki, and Kaiju Kobayashi. I struggled with that first name because it actually looks like kaiju, and I know it's not pronounced like that probably, but it's probably kaiju, something like that. And there's Kenpachiro Satsuma as Godzilla. So there is a person playing Godzilla in this movie, and that's one of the things that people make fun of these Godzilla movies for. But it is really something to have a human in that suit. It literally kind of humanizes the character. So if you have somebody playing Godzilla and they kind of make the monster scary, that really shows that the person behind the giant lizard is actually doing a performance. If they're able to make the monster scary again, it's a bit of an accomplishment. So anyway, I've said enough about this movie, I think. Thanks for tuning in to Critical Wade Theory, or again, the Kaiju Files if you want. I probably will be looking at some more Godzilla movies in the future, so be on the lookout for those. I already reviewed at least one other Godzilla movie. And of course, I'll be looking at other types of movies here and there and other topics, TV shows, political and social commentary. I might even start doing some book reviews if I can get into reading again. But anyway, if you enjoyed this breakdown of this 1980s Godzilla movie, feel free to share it. You can rate this episode if you want, and hit the subscribe button if there is one, and check out the other episodes. So I'll eventually be looking at some kaiju crossovers and stuff like that too once I get around to it. I know next week I'm actually planning to be out of town visiting family, but I might still shoot an episode or two. I might record something. So until then, respect the monster and understand the metaphor.